The island of New Plutonia had gone through many changes since the theft of the sacred fruit. Destinova, fearing that others would come in search of Imagino's killer, had formed a significant army made up of her bravest and most ferocious offspring. Seeing what she was doing, the star vulture Bazardo had promised her through their telepathic connection that his strongest descendants would help guard New Plutonia in times of war. So 7 years passed, and New Plutonia's small town grew, though it never went past the trees that separated it from the beach. That, perhaps, was the reason that the woman who had been shipwrecked did what she did. She had no memory, wasn't sure how she ended up on the beach, waterlogged and shivering from her recent experiences. She felt a pang of hunger as she headed for the trees, hoping to find nuts or fruits. She saw the dune and its singular tree. Seeing the fruit clinging high atop it, she whispered a silent prayer of thanks before ascending and retrieving the delicious-looking fruit. Once back on the ground, she bit into it. A sweetness unlike anything she had ever known filled her mouth. It was like biting into joy, smiling. She savored the taste as she sat on the dune beneath the tree and drifted into an unexpected sleep. A figure no more than 3 years old toddled up to her. He had green eyes and silver hair, unusual for a child barely older than a baby. He was dressed in a child's sailor suit, and his eyes had an imploring look to them. "Will you be my mommy?" She knew she had to be dreaming. Nevertheless, she gave the only answer that made sense to her heart. Yes. She was awakened by the feel of someone jostling her arm. "Lady! Wake up, lady!" Opening her eyes, she saw a tall figure that looked like something from a science fiction movie. It had a humanoid shape, but it was at least 8 feet tall and had a carapace that looked like a giant oyster shell. Its 6 eyes looked at her, but once she got past the fact that there were 6 of them, she could see that they held no malice. "You must come with me," the being said, and she noticed that the voice was female. Following, she watched as the being retrieved the fruit with a touch of reverence, then turned to look at her with a sense of confusion and perhaps awe. "You have eaten the sacred fruit. Destinova will want to speak with you." "Your Majesty," the being said as the young woman followed her into the hut that belonged to Destinova. "I have found this young woman on the dune of Imaginos. She has eaten of the sacred fruit." Destinova quirked an eyebrow. The last person to have eaten the fruit 7 years earlier had been immolated. Why had this woman survived? "You're certain of this, Ostrika?" Destinova asked. Ostrika handed Destinova the partially eaten fruit. The queen examined it, then placed it on a nearby table. Then she turned to the woman. "What is your name?" The woman bowed her head, shaking it uncertainly. "I see," she said. "Well, until we can find out who you are, I will give you a name Oceana. The woman seemed to consider this for a moment before nodding. Good, Destinova said decisively. Now, I must tell you the last time anyone ate one of the fruits of the blood tree. It did not end well for them. Why did you eat it? I did not know it was sacred to you, Oceana replied. I was hungry, and it was the first thing I saw that I thought might be good to eat. And what did it taste like to you? Destinova asked in curiosity. Indescribably good, Oceana admitted. Though if it was deadly to others, you probably shouldn't tell people. No need to tempt fate. No, indeed, Destinova agreed. She turned to Ostrika. This does not leave this room. Understood, Your Majesty, Ostrika agreed. I had a dream, Oceana told Destinova. It was short, but it stuck with me. There was a child. Very young, he asked me if I would be his mother. What did this child look like? Destinova asked. A toddler, Oceana recalled. But his eyes were a beautiful shade of sea green, like you see in the tropics. And his hair was silver. Imaginos, Destinova gasped, her voice barely more than a whisper. So our late benefactor is returning, and he has chosen you to be his mother. Who is Imaginos? Oceana asked. Oh, the tales I could tell you, Destinova replied. Imaginos was many things, literally, but most importantly to the people of this island. He was a rescuer, a provider, and a protector. He was executed 14 years ago for refusing to give our location to those who wished to exploit us. Sounds like he was an honorable man. Oceana smiled. And now, I will be the mother of this fine man reborn. You must remain with us, Destinova decided. I will have a home built for you. There is room to the southeast for more domiciles. Thank you, Oceana replied. She didn't know if she had a home elsewhere, if she lived alone or had a family. Indeed, if she did have others. Were they alive or dead? The word shipwreck danced through her mind, and she wondered if that was how she had ended up here. The hut that was built for Oceana stood in the middle of Ariana Road, amongst a row of 4 others which were clearly built for families. It, too, was slightly larger than the typical one-person hut. But as a soon-to-be single mom, she would eventually need the space. The huts of New Plutonia did not have refrigerators, as the people of the island ate only fresh food which was provided daily at the community meals. Such things were not necessary, nor was there any electricity to run it, so they had learned to do without. Oceana learned that the fish they took in each day was just enough to feed the population for that evening's meal, no more, no less. And the bones and heads were planted in the gardens as fertilizer, except on Vulture's Day, when each family would leave a single carcass for the star vultures who came from the rings of Saturn to feed. The fire of Ariana, which had been lit several years earlier, was maintained by the community, each person older than 20 taking a turn at keeping it going. This was very important since torches taken from the flames each winter were used to light the fireplaces in each hut during the colder months, and to light the community cooking stove for the regular fish dinner, an occasional pot of steamers, which happened once a month in the summer. Desdenova brought a torch to the home of Oceana. They lit the small fireplace, hanging a small tea cauldron filled with fresh water from a nearby waterfall at the center. "I've brought some tea," Desdenova told her. And as she added the leaves to the wooden cups, Oceana could smell the familiar scent of peppermint. "Thank you," Oceana said, as she went to the cupboard in the kitchen area and retrieved a wood jar that was filled with sun-baked pastries that her neighbors had given her to celebrate her moving into the area. "From the Marins?" Desdenova observed, selecting a banana-flavored biscuit. Oceana replied around a mouthful of a chocolate that was given to her by the Mazzaro family. Swallowing, she added, "Everyone here has been very kind. You're the mother of our benefactor," Desdenova told her. "We all want you to be healthy and happy, which reminds me of the reason I came here. Not just to bring you your share of the fire, but to let you know that our local midwife, Callisto Debia, is honored to accept you in her care." "Do I have an appointment?" Oceana asked. "Tomorrow morning after breakfast," Desdenova replied. "Her midwifery is 2 blocks west on Sea Breeze Avenue. From the community dining location, it's less than half a block. Everything is so conveniently located here," Oceana observed. "Imaginos and his crew set it up that way for us," Desdenova said, "during the Day of Liberation." "What was the Day of Liberation?" Oceana asked. Desdenova went over to the window. "How old do you think I am?" she asked. "At a guess," Oceana pondered. "I would guess 25, maybe 30 at most." "I'm 219 years old," Desdenova replied. "I was born in the early 1800s in the American state of New Hampshire. Or at least, Imaginos was I'm one of his aspects, a mirror image of him, born of unhappy circumstances. For many years I was kept prisoner, forced into things that I will not speak of. All I will say is that every being on this island over the age of 100 was birthed by me. But there must be at least 100 people that age here," Oceana observed, her voice filled with shock. 307, Desdenova replied. "Imaginos and a small army rescued us and brought us to this island on a ship, the Plutonia, which we named the island after. The children seem to have mixed feelings about Imaginos," Oceana noted. "Indeed," Desdenova told her. "The younger children are too little to remember him. He died 14 years ago, but they've been told about his visits by their parents as a bedtime story. Sounds a little like the Easter Bunny or Santa Claus," Oceana remarked. "Perhaps," Desdenova smiled thoughtfully, "if either of them came with a full army and took the children to an island on a tall ship rather than sneaking into houses and leaving candy and toys." The cauldron whistled and Oceana poured the tea into 2 cups, handing one to Desdenova. "Thank you," Desdenova said, taking a sip. They spent the next hour in a comfortable silence, just sipping their tea and contemplating the mystery of Imaginos.
At 7'9", Callisto de Beer was short for an oysterkin hybrid. She had a softness to her blue pearlescent eyes that spoke of her years as the island's midwife. It was a task that she loved dearly. She refused to call it a job. Jobs were unpleasant things that made you feel obligated. This was something she loved. Helping mothers with their pregnancies and the births of their beautiful children. Sometimes things did not go as planned, and she had been broken-hearted as a stillborn child came into the world. And New Plutonia was not without its share of children who'd been born with birth defects, blindness, deafness, or physical maladies. The families of these children who suffered these afflictions were given aid and emotional support from the community, and Desdenova schools for the deaf and blind were established early on to teach and integrate those with said conditions. And for the physically compromised, there were lessons taught from birth on how to work around their limitations. There were no metal and rubber wheelchairs. Such materials did not exist on New Plutonia, nor would they have been of much use on the island's sandy beaches and streets. Instead, the larger and stronger of the oysterkin hybrids would carry their friends and loved ones piggyback style too. And from the daily gatherings, never once complaining, because to them, it was not an obligation. It was a kindness. But today's mother was not to face any such problems. At least Callisto hopes that was the case. Today's mother was expecting a birth no one could have foreseen. The rebirth of Imaginos. It would be the first time a child would be born on the island who appeared fully human according to Desdenova. The mother had eaten of the sacred fruit, but instead of being turned to ashes, she had been chosen to bear the newly returned Imaginos, even dreaming of him as a toddler. There was a knock on the door. "Come in," she invited. Oceana entered the hut along with Desdenova. "Callisto de Beer," Desdenova said. "This is Oceana." Callisto smiled and gestured to a comfortable wicker chair. "Please, have a seat," she offered. Oceana sat in the proffered seat as she answered, "Thank you." Desdenova excused herself and left the midwifery. Callisto brought a plate of biscuits into the consultation room. It had been 3 months since Oceana's visits had begun. Today marked the first visit of the young woman's second trimester. Her physical examination had been normal, and it was now time for their regular discussion. "How are you getting along at home?" Callisto asked. "Other than the occasional bout of stomach discomfort, pretty good," Oceana admitted. "Peppermint tea and digestive biscuits will relieve that," Callisto told her. "But there's something I need to tell you, something that I discovered today during your examination." "Is something wrong?" Oceana asked. "No, just unexpected," Callisto replied. "I will need to inform the Queen as well. It appears you are having twins." "Twins?" Oceana asked. "But the dream, there was only one child in the dream." "How?" Perhaps the soul of Imaginos was too much for a single body, Callisto suggested. Whatever the reason, I can assure you that both are healthy so far, and I don't perceive any problems in the future. She held out the plate, and Oceana took a biscuit. Thank you, Oceana said, taking a bite. She chewed thoughtfully for a moment, then swallowed and said, I hope the world will be ready for 2 of them. It will have to be, Callisto replied. After Oceana left to go to the market, Callisto shuttered her midwifery and made her way to Queen Desdenova's hut. Desdenova was outside, tending to her garden, when Callisto arrived. I thought you were working in your shop today, Desdenova observed. I was, Callisto said, and I will be returning forthwith, but I have news on the return of Imaginos. Pray tell, Desdenova invited as she carefully examined the leaves on one rosebush. What is that about his return that has you so flummoxed? Not his, Callisto corrected. There. Desdenova stood up straight and turned to face the midwife. Twins, Callisto explained. Oh, Imaginos, Desdenova breathed. Is your soul so profound that one body alone cannot support it? Perhaps it was because she was expecting twins. Perhaps the spirit of Imaginos was just impatient to have the same birthday as before. Or maybe it was something that no one could have foreseen. Whatever the cause, Oceana went into labor during the community breakfast 5 weeks early. It was Dublin, of the W clan, who was sitting next to Oceana, who noticed that she was in distress and alerted Desdenova. Are you okay? Oceana was about to say she was fine, that she was just having some discomfort when her water broke. Desdenova steadied Oceana as she led her into her hut, Callisto joining them from a nearby table. As Callisto pulled back the blankets and sheets, Desdenova guided Oceana onto the bed and made her comfortable. She carefully helped Oceana remove any garments that would get in the way, then moved to stand beside her head, wiping the sweat from her brow as she spoke words of encouragement. You're doing fine, Callisto told her as she examined her. Your dilation is at 7 centimeters, so you still have some time before delivery. For now, just try to relax. I know this is a stressful and painful time for you, so I'll prepare a hot water bladder for you. Desdenova nodded at the look Callisto was giving her. She might have been the queen, but at this moment she knew that the midwife was in charge. She went to the fire of Ariana and retrieved a torch to light the hearth. Then she placed a sheepskin bladder filled with water into a boiling cauldron and warmed it for several minutes before wrapping it in a woolen cloth and handing it to Callisto, who gave it to Oceana as a means of comfort. Lying on her side, clutching the bladder like a lifeline, Oceana wept tears of worry and discomfort. The pain had lessened somewhat, but it was still there. She wanted this to be over, wanted to see her twins and hold them, to know that they were okay. If someone had asked her what she would have been doing a year ago, she didn't really know what her answer would have been. She had been so focused on her present life that she hadn't considered what she had lost very often. A couple of times she had wondered if she had family beyond the obvious mother. Of course, she also had a father in the biological sense, but that didn't mean that she had a daddy.
She wondered if the man her mother had shared herself with had been a good father and husband, or perhaps a traveler who had lodged temporarily in her house, wining and dining a naive young woman until the lure of wanderlust had drawn him away once more. Whatever had happened, Oceana did not dwell upon it overmuch. Instead, she focused on her own pre-labor breathing and the soothing sensation of the hot water bladder. Soon Callisto returned to check on her progress. "It's time," Callisto told her. "Your dilation is 10 centimeters. Destinova stood by Oceana's head again, holding her hand as Callisto guided her through the delivery. 7 hours later, the first cry of the first infant rang out in the room. "A boy," Callisto announced. Imaginos, Oceana named the baby. There really wasn't anything else she could name him after all that she had been hearing since her pregnancy was first discovered. Moments later, a second cry joined the first. "Another boy," Callisto told her with a smile. Oceana considered for a moment. What name did one give a second Imaginos? She couldn't give both of her sons the same name. They deserved their individuality after all. Then it hit her. It might not be a conventional boy's name, but it was a derivative of Imaginos, Maggie. Destinova didn't argue the point. No one on the island would ever dream of teasing either of the twins. They were too caught up in the idea that their benefactor had been given back to them. "Welcome to New Plutonia, Imaginos and Maggie," she said with a soft smile. She looked at Oceana. "They're beautiful," she said. "Congratulations."